papers, and then there will be time for Q&A. The moderators will read the Q&A, the questions. So should you watch this later on YouTube, then you'll have the question as well as the answer. And we will be monitoring chat and Q&A. Someone might be looking at Zulip, but if you are on Zulip, ask the question as well as the answer. And we will be monitoring chat and, it's so weird to hear the echo. And in terms of chat, don't post questions there. That's mostly for technical issues. And then the Q&A is for questions. Did I miss anything?
No, this was perfect. Thanks, Kay. And for everything, not just for this. And yeah, so we're the Zero Knowledge session. Welcome, everyone. And happy to introduce the moderators of this session, Geoffroy Couto, Muhammad Hajibadi, Abhishek Jain, and Ilon Yogev. And let the session begin.
Okay, let me introduce the first speaker. Let me just say we're going to have 7 papers, but only 5 talks. The last 3 ones is a soft merge. The first paper is Compact NISC from Standard Assumptions on Bilinear Maps. This is a paper by Shu, Ryo, Shuta, and Takashi, and Ryo is going to give the talk.
Hi, thank you for introduction. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So I'm Ryo. I'm going to talk about compact NISCs from Standard Assumptions on Bilinear Maps. This is a joint work with Shu Katsumata, Shota Yamada from ICE, and Takashi Yamakawa from NTT. Okay, this is our result. We present compact CRS NISCs from Standard Assumptions on Bilinear Maps. Here, compact means the proof size is the size of the verification circuit for NP relations plus polynomial of security parameter for all NP relation. If we restrict NP relation computable in NC1 circuit, then the proof size is the size of witness plus polynomial of security parameter. Our assumption is matrix decisional Diffie-Hellman assumption, which includes the decisional linear assumption or symmetric external Diffie-Hellman assumptions as special cases. This is our result. So let me briefly review what is CRS non-interactive zero knowledge. There are approver and verifier and trusted third party, which generates a common reference string, which denoted by CRS. The prover have statement X and witness W and generate a proof pi and send it to the verifier. The verifier output accept or reject this proof pi. There are 3 security requirements for CRS non-interactive zero knowledge. Completeness says if the statement X is true, then the verifier accept this proof. Soundness says if the statement is not true, then the verifier output reject. Lastly, the knowledge says the proof pi gives no information gives no information beyond the statement is true. This is a CRS NISC. Okay, we focus on the proof size in asymptotic sense in this study. This table shows the previous works on CRS NISCs for all NP languages. There are pros and cons in previous works. First, 4 rows in the table achieve the NISC for NP language from standard assumptions, but the proofs are not compact. There is a multiplicative factor on the size of a verification circuit. The last 2 rows achieve the compact NISCs, but they use somewhat non-standard assumptions. GGI plus 15 uses circular secure fully homomorphic encryption. And KNYY19 uses dynamic assumptions, so-called Q-type assumption. Okay. So in this study, we present a compact CRS NISC for all NP languages from standard decisional linear or symmetric external Diffie-Hellman assumptions. This is a very short talk, so I briefly give the super high-level overview of our construction. We have three tools. One is one-time secret key encryption with additive overhead ciphertext. The second one is non-compact NISC, and the last one is compact constrained signature with decomposable online-offline efficiency, which we introduced in this study. Okay. The first technical contribution of our work is presenting the compiler from these three tools into compact NISC for NP languages. And the first tool is instantiated by standard computational Diffie-Hellman assumption. And we know that we can achieve a non-compact NISC from the D-lane or SXDH assumption. And as the second technical contribution, we present the compact constrained signature with this new property from standard matrix decisional Diffie-Hellman assumption. This is the high-level overview of our construction. And we have additional result. We have perfect NISC with proof size is the size of witness times polynomial of security parameter from D-lane assumption. And we also have universally composable NISC with proof size is the size of witness times polynomial of security parameter from D-lane assumption. I skipped the details of previous work in this short talk. Let me briefly summarize. We propose a compact NISC from standard D-lane or SXDH assumption. Our key tool is the compact constrained signature with decomposable online-offline efficiency. For the data, please see the video on YouTube. And we have application to shorter, perfect, or UC NISC from standard D-lane or SXDH assumption. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for some questions.
Are there any questions?
So there are three questions. So Benjamin Fuller asks, how close are you to running into the impossibility result for snarks from Gentry Wix?
I think, I'm not sure it's optimal or not. I don't remember the exact result of Gentry Wix. So yeah, I cannot answer correctly now, but maybe it's very difficult to achieve shorter than our result. I'm not sure.
Maybe we can take one more question. For the other question, we will have time to re-ask them during the panel discussion after the talks. So Pratish Tata asks, so how does the constraint signature notion is different from ABS, so attribute-based signature?
Okay, I don't think, I think it's not so different from attribute-based signature. I think there is a conversion between constrained signature, attribute-based encryption, and homomorphic signature. So very similar notions, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So for the other question, you have the possibility to answer them directly in the Q&A during the next talks. But then we will also ask them and discuss them during the panel discussion so that it's recorded on the YouTube.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Rio. The next talk is new constructions of statistical NISCs, dual mode DV-NISCs, and more by Benoît Libert, Alain Pasleg, Hou-Tae Cui, David Wu, and David will give the talk.
Great. So thanks for the introduction. Can you all see my slides? Okay, yep. Great. So I'll be talking about statistical zero knowledge. This is joint work with Benoît, Alain, and Hou-Tae. So just to remind everyone from Rio's talk, a non-interactive zero knowledge proof system is a two-party protocol between a prover and a verifier, where the prover tries to convince the verifier that some MP statement X is indeed true. And as Rio mentioned, a NISC should satisfy three main properties: completeness, which says the honest prover should convince the honest verifier of true statements; soundness, which says that the dishonest prover should not be able to convince the verifier of a false statement; and zero knowledge, which says that the verifier should learn nothing more about the statement other than the fact that it is true. Now, these two later properties, soundness and zero knowledge, we can consider there are several possible variants. A computational variant, where the property only needs to hold against computationally bounded adversaries, and a statistical variant, where the property holds even against computationally unbounded adversaries. Throughout this work, we will focus on the common reference string setting, where we assume that there is a trusted setup that samples a common reference string, or CRS, and gives it to the prover and the verifier for the duration of the protocol. We will also consider the relaxation to the designated verifier setting, where the verifier also possesses a secret verification key. Typically, this could be generated by the trusted party at the setup time, or in a malicious setting, this could actually be an independent component sampled by the verifier afterwards. However, once this trusted setup is completed, the prover can now non-interactively prove statements of its choosing to the verifier. And if we're in a designated verifier setting, then we require that soundness should hold even if the prover has access to the verification oracle. Namely, the verification key can be used to verify many statements without needing to resample it or resampling the CRS. So non-interactive zero knowledge has received quite an extensive study over the last few years. And in particular, we have many constructions of NISICs from a wide range of cryptographic assumptions, such as factoring, pairing-based assumptions, very recently in a breakthrough result from lattice-based assumptions, and more. If we further restrict ourselves to the designated verifier setting, a very recent line of work has shown that essentially we can realize designated verifier NISICs from all assumptions that imply public key encryption. However, if we look at this list of constructions and we restrict ourselves to only those that provide statistical zero knowledge, there still remain several gaps in our understanding. Notably, in a publicly verifiable setting, we only have constructions from pairings and LWE. We do not have constructions from the factoring-based assumptions. And the gap is even bigger in the designated verifier setting, where other than the publicly verifiable constructions, the only non-trivial construction is based on a decisional composite residuosity assumption. Notably, nothing is still known from, say, the DDH assumption in a pairing-free group. So in this work, we study whether we can develop new constructions of statistical zero knowledge in both the publicly verifiable as well as the designated verifier settings. Now, from an application perspective, statistical zero knowledge is oftentimes very appealing because it provides an everlasting notion of privacy. Privacy holds not only for the duration of the online protocol, but if someone were to record the proof and later on try and compromise zero knowledge, possibly with new computational capabilities, they would still not be able to do so. So in this work, we describe a new compiler that takes a NISIC in something called the hidden bits model. This is an idealized information theoretic model, first used in the work of Feige, Lapidat, and Shamir to obtain NISICs for all of MP in a CRS model from trapdoor permutations. We take the same information theoretic starting point and give a compiler that allows us to realize statistical non-interactive zero knowledge. There are several ways of instantiating our compiler. First, we can obtain statistical designated verifier NISICs from the DDH assumption in a pairing-free group. This is the first to do so. And in fact, we can instantiate it from the general K-linear family of assumptions. Recall that DDH is, of course, the one linear assumption. We can also instantiate from the subgroup indistinguishability family of assumptions, such as quadratic residuosity or decisional composite residuosity. Notably here, our construction actually provides a dual mode property. Namely, the common reference string can actually be instantiated in two computationally indistinguishable modes. One mode gives us computational NISIC proofs, while the other gives us statistical NISIC arguments. So depending on whether you want statistical soundness or statistical zero knowledge for the underlying designated verifier NISIC, you can sample the CRS from the corresponding distribution. Moreover, these constructions satisfy a malicious property where security holds even if the verifier is allowed to choose its verification key in a malicious manner. In this case, the only trusted setup that we need to rely on is either the sampling of a common reference string, or in some cases, just a common random string will suffice. Secondly, we can show that a generalization of our technique can be extended to obtain a new construction of a statistical NISIC in a standard common reference string model. These are publicly verifiable from pairing-based assumptions. While we already know how to construct NISICs from pairings by the classic work of Gross, Ostrowski, and Sahai, one thing that is notable here is that we can actually realize it on a weaker pairing-based assumption. Namely, we only require a decisional assumption in one of the subgroups, whereas the previous works required decisional assumptions in both of the underlying subgroups. And from a conceptual perspective, our compiler is actually the first that shows how to go from the idealized hidden bits model to obtain statistical zero knowledge. Previous invocations of this construction from the hidden bits model to the standard model, or the standard CRS model, yielded statistical soundness, but computational zero knowledge. So with that, I will conclude the talk. I'll refer to the video for the full details, as well as the paper if you want to see how the construction actually works and how the compiler operates. Here, I'll just provide a summary and a comparison against the previous constructions of NISICs in various models.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, are there any questions? In the Q&A, in the chat. So I wanted to ask, you said that you get a weaker pairing assumption. Could you say again exactly what was weaker?
Yeah, so good. So the assumption that we need to instantiate our NISIC is we need a k-linear assumption in one of the base groups and a k-kernel linear assumption, which is a search assumption in the other base group. So in previous constructions, say by Grosov-Strauss-T and Sahai, you required a k-linear assumption to hold in both of the groups. So we have gone from 2 computational assumptions to 1 computational and 1 search assumption. So it's a slightly weaker assumption. So in particular, k-lin k-kerlin implies k-lin.
I see, okay. Okay, I don't see any other question. Okay. Geoffrey, do you see something?
I also have one question to David. Is your statistical NISIC, is it adaptively sound or non-adaptively sound?
Non-adaptive sound. So our statistical NISIC is non-adaptively sound. Our computational NISIC proof is adaptively sound.
I see. So I was wondering, is the impossibility result in the case of publicly verifiable NISIC, does it also apply to a statistical?
That's a great question. So I think at least the barriers that we run into in trying to prove security for our dual mode construction downgrades the soundness from adaptive to non-adaptive, because essentially the security argument that we're relying on is arguing that these 2 modes are computationally indistinguishable. And now you have the problem of having to decide an NP language within the security reduction. So we do run into that barrier, but whether that lower bound more generally extends to the designated verifier setting, I have not touched.
Okay, I see there's one last question here. Can you obtain non-interactive zaps from your dual mode?
That's a great question. So we are not able to do that. And I think, we tried a little bit, but we have not been successful there. And that would be very interesting if that was possible.
Okay, thank you, David. Let's go on to our next talk. So this is non-interactive zero knowledge in pairing free groups from weaker assumption. This is by Geoffroy, Shu, and Bogdan will give the talk.
Hi, everybody. Now I hope you can hear me. So welcome to my summary on non-interactive zero knowledge in pairing free groups from weaker assumptions. So let's make this full screen. So in this paper, we're interested in a long-standing open problem, which is whether we can build non-interactive zero knowledge in groups where discrete logarithm is hard, but without having to rely on pairings. And I will not define what NISICs are because you've already seen it twice. So we have the following 2 results. The first is NISIC in cyclic groups based on the 1/2 to the 3/4 lambda. So this is the one-way key-dependent message security of El-Gamal. So this is an exponential key-dependent message security assumption. And we also need to assume CDH. And the second result is a non-constructive one. And here, this is an infinitely often NISIC. And here we remove CTH, but the exponent becomes worse. So what is our idea? We are inspired by a series of previous work, which looked at the Fiat-Schemmer transform. The Fiat-Schemmer transform was used to compile a SEMA protocol into an interactive zero-knowledge protocol by using random oracle. And this previous work used it replaced the random oracle with a correlation intractable hash function. And they have done that very successfully. And this allows you to construct a NISIC in the standard model. So here, by starting from a SEMA protocol for MP, we compiled this into, they compiled this into a NISIC for the whole of MP. And here we make some observations. If we look at the techniques that are available to us right now in cyclic groups, it seems that the assumption quality, in the end, it will depend on the rate of the SEMA protocol that we compile. So it will depend on the size of the first flow over the size of the challenge. And all the protocols that we looked at, they all seem to, that covered the whole of MP, seem to have very large first flows. And technically in the proof, at some point, we need to guess this first flow. So if it has very large size, that's very bad. And this will lead in the end to a large loss in the assumption. And our idea here is to start instead of starting with a SEMA protocol for the whole of MP, is to start with a SEMA protocol that only works for restricted language. And then replace for this SEMA protocol the random oracle in the Fiat-Schemmer with the correlation intractable hash function, which allows us to obtain this NISIC for the restricted language. And we postpone extending this NISIC to MP for a later phase in the construction. And here I just want to say that in the paper, we need to pay particular care because this compilation step has to be careful not to transform the initial assumption if it's falsifiable to maintain this flavor. So if you do it in a trivial way, sometimes it happens that the assumption becomes not falsifiable. And now with this NISIC for the restricted language, we need to extend it towards MP, and this is done by using this NISIC, this restricted NISIC, to construct a verifiable pseudorandom generator, so a VPRG. And now using previous results, this VPRG with hidden bits NISICs is known to imply CRS NISICs for the whole MP. And since hidden bits NISICs, which were described previously, exist unconditionally, then the VPRG is enough to obtain NISICs for MP. And now I just want to compare the assumption that we have to the previous best assumption that was sufficient to construct the NISICs. So what we do is we improve the exponent here in the advantage from 2 to the lambda to 2 to the 3 over 4 lambda. And since the best generic attack is known to have an advantage of poly of lambda over 2 to the lambda, our assumption now has an exponential gap between the advantage that we allow and the advantage of the best generic attack. So if there are improvements in the best generic attack, that will not necessarily break our assumption unless they go beyond this. But we need to make some minor relaxations. So for example, we need to use CDH. And in the second result, we want to remove CDH. And the reason for this is because this KDN security notion that I just described seems to be a symmetric key style assumption. And it has been also a long-standing problem whether it is possible to construct NISICs from assumptions that are not known to imply public key encryption. So since CDH implies public encryption, we want to get rid of it and preserve this symmetric key style flavor. And we are able to do that, but in the end, the result is non-constructive. So it's an infinitely often NISIC. You can see more details in the paper about what that means. But what I can say is that removing CDH also leads to a loss in the assumption. So now the assumption here, the exponent is far worse. And this has been my presentation. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Bogdan. Let's see if there's any questions.
Yeah, maybe we can take one very quick question if there is one. Otherwise, we'll go on with the next talk to try to get more time during the panel discussion for questions. So Shruti Sekar asked, do you need exponential hardness from CDH?
I don't think so. I think it's enough to have polynomially hard CDH.
Okay, thank you, Bogdan. So We can now go on with the next talk, which is about which languages have foreground fully black box zero knowledge arguments from one-way functions. It's a paper by Karmit Azer, Rafael Paz, Muthu Ramakrishnan, Venkita Subramaniam, and Muthu will give the talk.
Thanks, Jeffwa. I want to talk about briefly about this work. It's a black box separation result of zero knowledge from one-way functions. It can be thought of as a strengthening of a previous work that was in 2007, a beautiful work by Jonathan Katz that showed, again, a black box impossibility result for zero knowledge proofs. This is joint work with Karmit Azer and Rafael Paz. One of the fundamental questions in cryptography that we all are interested in is understanding the minimal assumptions for a cryptographic task. And one of the tools, at least in terms of identifying these minimal assumptions, is to identify separations between primitives. And a powerful technique here is something known as a black box separation that was introduced in the seminal work of Impagliazzo and Rudich, where they showed that there is no black box construction of a key agreement from one-way functions. And since then, there have been several black box separation results. In a minute, I'll tell you what is a black box construction. Here are just a representative few results pertaining to one-way functions. So what do we mean by a black box construction? Well, specifically in this talk, we are interested in what is called a fully black box construction, where we want both the construction and the security reduction to be black box. So if I think of a primitive Q based on a primitive P, the construction is black box if the code for Q invokes P in a black box way. And the security reduction, on the other hand, is black box if the security reduction which breaks the primitive P accesses the adversary for the primitive Q and the primitive P in a black box way. So this is what we mean by a fully black box construction. And this talk is about ruling out fully black box constructions based on one-way functions. So specifically, we are interested in the round complexity of fully black box constructions of zero knowledge. So let's start with what is the state of affairs for proofs. So here, there have been many classical results and recent results. First we have an unconditional result which says, two round zero knowledge proofs or arguments exist only for trivial languages, meaning languages in BPP. This was extended by Goldreich-Kravchuk, who showed that only trivial languages have 3-round black box zero knowledge proofs or arguments. And finally, just for the case of proofs, Katz in 2007 showed that only languages in CoMA have 4-round zero knowledge proofs. Now, what this means is that, if you want it for all of NP, it's unlikely to get it in 4 rounds. To interpret Katz's result, it would mean that the polynomial hierarchy would have to collapse. So these are the negative results for zero knowledge proofs. On the positive side, we have the Goldreich-Kahan's result that shows how to construct a 5-round zero knowledge proof based on collision risk and hash function. This is a black box construction. And now, just to tidy up the the results over here, you can ask, can you do better than collision resistant hash functions for constructing zero knowledge proofs? And there have been lower bounds here. One result of mine with joint with Paz, we show that again it's unlikely for languages in NP to have a constant round zero knowledge proof based on one-way function, and similarly, a slightly stronger result, but for the case of one-way permutations, was shown by Gordon et al. So for the case of zero knowledge proofs, the state of affairs, it's essentially resolved in terms of round complexity and black box constructions. So what about zero knowledge arguments? And that's sort of the focus of this talk and this work. As I mentioned before, the 2-round impossibility and the 3-round impossibility results of Goldreich-Oren and Goldreich-Kravchuk extend to arguments as well. And for 4-round, we actually know a construction based on one-way function. This was, by Bellare et al. In 1997. And the first sort of fully black box construction based on one-way functions or one-way permutations was done by Pass and Wee in 2009, where they showed a 6-round construction for one-way permutations and a 7th round based on one-way functions. This was recently improved to 4 and 5 rounds respectively by 2 independent works in TCC 2018. One was a work of mine with Hazai, and the other work is Kurana et al., where they show a 4-round based on one-way permutation and 5-round based on one-way function. So this looks essentially complete. We kind of have a picture, except there is a very small gap, or maybe not a small, but there is a gap. And the gap is, can we construct 4-round zero-knowledge arguments for all of NP based on one-way functions? We can do it based on one-way permutations, a fully black box construction, but can you do it based on one-way functions? We know we can do it just black box, but we don't know if we can do it fully black box based on one-way functions. And that's sort of the gap remaining in this picture. And this is the question we address in this work. And the main result that we show here is that if a language L admits a 4-round fully black box zero-knowledge argument based on one-way functions, then the language is in COM-A, which again, you want to interpret saying that it's unlikely for all of NP. So let me just give you like very high level, like just a couple of slides on techniques, and that'll be all that I can give in this time frame. So here is a schema for a 4-round zero-knowledge system. Roughly speaking, what happens is that the first message from the verifier, if you want this to be a zero-knowledge argument system, you need 2 properties to hold for this first message roughly. First, you want this for the zero-knowledge property, you want this first message to be binding. I mean, you know, the simulator is black box, you want to use rewinding techniques, so something needs to bind in the first message so that the simulator can benefit in rewinding the third to the second message. And on the other hand, soundness is going to require that this first message be hiding. Because otherwise, if I knew kind of like, you know, you can think of the verifier committing sort of some kind of the challenge in the first round. If the prover can decipher what this challenge is, then this protocol is no longer sound. So what this implies is that this first message essentially has to be both binding and hiding. And, you know, it needs to be some form of a non-interactive commitment scheme. And there was this, again, another work of Mahmoudi and Pass in 2012 that said that there is no fully black box construction of a non-interactive commitment scheme from one-way function. This is just the intuition as to why this impossibility result can hold, but you know, it doesn't just directly, it is not that we can show a 4-round zero-knowledge argument implies a non-interactive commitment. So roughly the techniques over here is, I mean, we have to show that the language is in COM-A. We cannot improve this to BPP because we do know of unconditional constructions of non-trivial languages in 4 rounds. So it has to be something bigger than BPP. We follow the template of Katz's lower bound for the proof system, but then, you know, we upgrade it for when the prover and verifier have access to a random oracle. We use like the standard in these cases. There is this heavy query learning algorithm that was, again, you know, introduced in the work of Impagliazzo and Rudich, but, you know, refined more in later works. And finally, you know, you can't just have the impossibility result in a random oracle because then it would hold for one-way permutations as well. And this is not true. We do have a 4-round construction. So you need to sort of induce collisions in the random oracle so that the impossibility result will hold only for one-way functions, and you know it'll manifest in the proof in that form. And here we use kind of ideas that were introduced in the Mahmoudi Pass work for non-interactive commitments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see about questions.
So first, maybe there is a very non-technical question coming from the chat. Apparently, your paper, your full talk is not online. So was it sent?
Yeah, a little late, but was sent yesterday.
Okay, so it should be online soon.
Yeah.
So Michael Walter is asking, is rewinding considered black box access?
Right. So, when you want the security reduction, as I said, you need the simulator to be black box. Yes. So this result holds only for black box simulators.
Benjamin Fowler is asking, how close are you to running into the impossibility result for SNARGs from Gen 3 weeks?
I think this is for a previous talk.
I think that was a previous talk. I mean, that's for non-interactive, right? Gen 3
right.
is for non-interactive.
Yeah, I got messed up. Yeah, right.
Actually, this is the only talk with 4 rounds. I think all the other talks in this session is 1 round or 2 rounds. So
yeah, that's right. Okay, so we'll have more questions in the discussion at the end.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. So now we're going on for the last talk. This is a soft merge of 3 papers. So this talk will be 10 minutes. Rex is giving the talk. Rex, are you ready? I see you're on mute. You can start sharing your screen.
Yeah, just a second. Can you see my screen? Hello?
Yeah. So Rex, are you going to introduce all the speakers from all the papers?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so let's see. So these are 3 papers. Yeah, what did you say? So
sorry, you broke up. Should I start?
Just a second, I'll just introduce all the authors. So this is statistical ZAP arguments. This is Saikrisha, Rex, Ayush, Dakshita, and Amit. Then there's statistical ZAPs and new oblivious transfer protocols. This is Vipul, Ayush, Zengong, and Julia. And statistical ZAP R, arguments from bilinear maps. With this is Alex, Vinod, and Daniel. And Rex is giving the talk on all 3 papers. And I hope he does a fair comparison. Okay.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. Elon just read out all the paper titles, so I'm not going to do that. But I guess the general theme that's present in all of these papers is that they all give new constructions of cryptographic notions with stronger statistical security guarantees. And so I'm going to introduce these 3 papers, and I'm going to try to give a map of everything that is going on here just by writing out all of the main results on one slide. And when I'm doing this, I'm not going to explain anything. So if you understand everything, great. But if there's some definition that you're not familiar with, hopefully I'll be able to fix that in the coming slides.
Rex, so I think you have some small floating window that we see. Can you close it?
I do. This thing?
The build order.
Build order? Okay, this is strange.
Am I the only one that's seeing this?
I see it as well.
How about now?
It's still there.
No, it's okay.
Transition slide window, the animation window.
Okay, that's very strange because I can't see it. How about now?
Yeah, great.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'll mute myself.
Okay, so like I said, I'm just going to put all the results on one slide. And from this point on, for most of the talk, I'm just going to refer to the 3 papers as paper 1, paper 2, and paper 3. And then at the very end, I'll remind you who did what. Okay, so let's get started. So the first result, which is achieved by paper 1 and paper 2, is 2-message public coin statistical witness indistinguishable arguments, or statistical ZAPs. And this is achieved using assuming variance of LWE. So you can assume quasi-polynomial LWE, but it also turns out that you can assume something that's slightly more general than this. Okay, so the second result, which was achieved by paper 3, is 2-message private coin but publicly verifiable statistical witness indistinguishable arguments, which paper 3 titles Zappers. And this is achieved assuming quasi-polynomial bilinear dealing. Okay, so the third result, which was achieved by paper 1, is two-message statistical zero-knowledge arguments under a superpolynomial simulation, and this is achieved using sub-exponential LWE. And then finally, the last result is three-message statistical receiver private oblivious transfer, which is achieved assuming polynomial time assumptions. Okay, so for the rest of the talk, I'm just going to I'm going to focus on the two ZAP-related constructions, and then at the very end, I will try to, if there's time, I'll try to go over the oblivious transfer result. And unfortunately, I won't have time to talk about the zero-knowledge result, and so I'll refer you to the paper for that. So let's quickly review what an argument system is. So let's say you have a language in NP, which means that for every X in the language, there is an efficiently verifiable witness, W for X. So the story is that there's a prover and a verifier, and the prover knows X and W, and the verifier only knows X, and the verifier wants to be convinced that X is in the language. So to that end, an argument system is a protocol that the prover and the verifier can use to interact with each other, such that the protocol might be possibly randomized, and what we want is that if X is in the language, then the verifier should accept. So for this argument system to be convincing, it has to be the case that for any efficient malicious prover and any X that's not in the language, the verifier should reject with overwhelming probability. So we call this property soundness. And so in the context of cryptography, most argument systems have some sort of privacy requirement. And one such privacy requirement is called witness indistinguishability, or WI. And what this says is that if you have a statement X where there are two unequal witnesses, and the prover chooses one of these witnesses at random, then a malicious verifier should not be able to tell which witness was used. So we're going to focus on a particular type of argument called a statistical ZAP. And so this is a witness indistinguishable argument that has the following additional requirements, which I'm going to describe now. So the first requirement is that the protocol is only allowed to take 2 rounds. And the second requirement is that the verifier should not have any private state. And in particular, its only message should be a public or a uniform random string. So we'll call this property the public coin property. And in particular, what this means is that any outside observer that sees the resulting transcript should be able to verify or to tell whether this transcript is an accepting transcript or not. And then the final requirement is that the WI protocol holds against computationally unbounded verifiers. So we'll call this property statistical WI. So before I go on, I want to talk about a variant which paper 3 introduces. So one of the reasons why, or one of the main reasons why the public coin property is desirable is because it implies this public verifiability. So paper 3 sets these notions. So they define what is called a zapper, what they call a zapper. And a zapper is defined to be a protocol where the verifier is potentially allowed to have private state, but where public verifiability is still preserved. So computational zaps were first introduced by Dwork and Naur in 2007, and they give the first construction of computational zaps from music proof systems in the common random string model. But since then, it's remained open whether there exist statistical zap arguments. And in the case of zapper arguments, there have been constructions, but the only constructions have relied on very strong non-falsifiable assumptions. So for zapper arguments, the question of whether there exist any constructions relying on standard falsifiable assumptions has also remained open since 2007. And so these two questions are the focus of our work. And so, and we show that the answer to both of these questions is yes. So in particular, we give the first construction of statistical zaps for all languages in NP in the plain model, assuming LWE, or variance of LWE. And then we also show that the first construction of statistical zaps for all languages, statistical zappers for all languages in NP in the plain model, assuming any sort of falsifiable assumption, and in particular, we assume quasi-polynomial delinear on groups with bilinear maps. Okay, so for the remainder of my talk, I'm just going to quickly go over paper 2's OT result. So let me quickly review what OT, or oblivious transfer, is. So oblivious transfer is a two-party protocol where the sender has two messages and the receiver has a choice bit. And then we want that after the protocol, the receiver learns M sub B, but the receiver should not learn anything about the other message. On the other hand, we want the sender not to learn anything about the bit B. So just to quickly motivate the OT result, there have been several works on getting two-round OT with statistical sender privacy. And so in the context of these works, one very natural question is, does there exist two-round OT with statistical receiver privacy? So it turns out that this isn't the case. And I think I'm just going to skip over the details of why this is true. But essentially, if you assume that there does exist such a protocol that gives such a strong guarantee to the receiver, then it actually implies that there is a non-uniform receiver that contradicts sender's privacy. So with that in mind, I guess the most natural next question is whether this is possible in 3 rounds. So in 2018, Kalai, Kurana, and Sahai gave the first such construction of a 3-round OT with statistical receiver's privacy, but they assumed superpolynomial assumptions. And so paper 2 improves upon this by giving the first such construction assuming polynomial assumptions. In particular, they assume either 2-round statistical sender private OT, or they assume polynomial hardness of CDH. Okay, so to conclude, here again are all the results by all respective papers. Thanks for listening.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let's see about questions.
So we can now move to the panel discussion. So it's now time to ask questions about any papers if you have any. So we'll first look at the solved questions, which have been directly solved live by the author. So for example, Elger Lipma asked to Rio, what's the computational efficiency of your solution?
So we didn't check the exact computational cost, but I think it is at the most square of the size of the verification circuit times the polynomial of the security parameter.
And so this also answers the question by Enka Nitulescu about what the verifier and prover cost in your NESIC.
Yes, so it's the same as I said, at the most a square of verification circuit size times polynomial of security parameter. Yeah, we didn't check, but yeah, I think it's at the most square of the size of the circuit.
Also, I myself have a question for Mutu. So we know that we can build those truly black box zero knowledge arguments from injective one-way function, if I'm not wrong. And you give a separation from one-way functions. So what about almost injective one-way functions, which for every input size are injective on all but an exponentially small fraction of the domain?
Yeah, I mean, all the one-way permutation results extends to that. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I write one-way permutations, but I should write it as injective one-way functions.
But what about almost injective one-way function?
So there are many definitions. Your definition is that all but a negligible fraction has like collisions kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, as long as you can construct a non-interactive commitment, then you can do it.
Okay.
I think in the Mahmoudi past paper, they also talk about like these hitting set generators that can give, like, I think that's sort of maybe the weakest assumption to construct non-interactive commitments. And I think that'll do.
Thank you. And so there is a question from Anka Nitulescu to David. No, this one was answered, sorry. Another question from Anka to David. So what about the gross of Ostrovsky-Tsai transformation to construct non-interactive zaps?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we did not try that explicitly, but if my understanding is correct for the GOS construction, I think they were relying on specific algebraic properties within the CRS. And it's not clear that those algebraic properties apply to our dual mode, but we didn't try also. So it might be very interesting to see if something along those lines might be possible.
And we also have a question from the chat, so chat.iacr.org, from Paul Grubbs. So Mutu, you said that Goldrush and Kratzig had a 4-round protocol from collision-resistant hash functions, but Kilian also showed a 4-round protocol. What's the difference between GK99 and Kilian? Is it just a matter of proof versus arguments?
Yes, that's right. And I have a feeling I might have missed a reference. I think there was a fully black box construction of proofs from collision resistant hash function. I think this might be a work of, with zero knowledge PCPs, like Asia et al. I might have forgotten. I think there seems to be like a gap that you have a black box construction from collision resistant hash functions, but I think there is a fully black box construction as well.
So from Akshayaram Srinivasan to Rio, why is a public key assumption, so CDH, needed for constructing a secret key encryption scheme with additive overhead?
Okay, so I didn't say in the presentation we need one-time secret SKE with additive overhead, and whose decryption circuit is computable in NC1 circuits. So that's why we need the computational Diffie-Hellman assumption. Yeah, we don't know how to achieve such a SKE using this some secret key type assumption, like one function. Yeah.
Let's see.
And yeah.
There's another question in the chat.
I think it's just saying thanks to. Oh no, you mean in chat.acr.org? Yes.
Doesn't the result of Katz and Mutu mentioned rule out 4-round protocols for black box simulation unless L is in co-AM? This is from Arka.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't quite follow the question.
Doesn't the result of Katz and Mutu mentioned rule out 4-round protocols for black box simulation unless L is in co-AM?
Co-MA, but yeah, only for proofs though. So Katz's proof work only for Katz's lower bound works only for proofs. It doesn't extend to arguments. And just a rough reason is that, there is a reduction there where you construct a cheating prover to break soundness. And, in the lower bound, if this is, if you use an unbounded prover, then it'll work. Like you can break the soundness only for proofs. So Katz's result only rules out proofs. What we do here is we rule out arguments, and specifically based on one-way functions.
Okay.
I myself also have a joint question for the authors of the first two paper, which is kind of the cross question. Typically for the paper on compact NISIC, what prevents you from achieving something which is dual mode? And for the paper on dual mode DV NISIC, how compact can you make it?
We are trying to achieve that, but we didn't succeed yet. So in our construction, one of the crucial tool is secret key encryption with additive overhead side. But if we want to achieve dual mode, then we somehow achieve this statistically hiding variant of that. So that's a difficulty. We don't know how to solve it yet.
So to be clear, the problem is within the secret key encryption scheme?
Sorry, say it again.
So to be clear, in which of the component is the issue?
Secret key encryption, because
okay.
Yeah, it's only computational security.
So you would that suffice to have a kind of low C, like dual mode encryption scheme with a secret key encryption scheme with a low C mode and an injective mode?
Yeah, then if we have such a primitive, then we can achieve it, but we don't know how to achieve it. Yeah.
And so for David, the opposite question, how compact can your construction be? Can you get like directly linear in the circuit size, or
yeah,
more compact?
That's a good question. So the compactness is directly related to the efficiency of the underlying hidden bits model NISIC, because ultimately we are compiling a NISIC in a hidden bits model to a NISIC in a CRS model or the designated verifier model. And my understanding is that the hidden bits model are quite large, so it's going to be some polynomial in the circuit size. Trying to optimize that would be very interesting, but it's not something that we tried.
Yeah, so maybe there could be some like more complex approach, kind of like in the paper of Rio et al., where you use the inefficient NISICs plus other tools to compile all of that into a more efficient NISIC while keeping the same properties.
Right. So I think with FHE, you can do that generically, and then from weaker assumptions potentially as well. So it could be possible that some of the techniques that Rio mentioned can also be applied in this setting.
We have a few more minutes. So are there any other questions?
So I don't see any other questions. Did I miss something?
I don't see any other question as well.
So I guess we should first thank all the speakers and all the co-authors. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There is now a 15-minute break. Then the next session on succinct and concretely efficient proof systems. So it's in 17 minutes from now. I cannot tell you the hour because each person has a different time zone. So we'll work by diffs, and I urge you to join the next session. Thank you for all the participants and speakers.
Yeah,
You
and
want to say something?
Thanks all the moderators, and see you in 16 minutes to 15 UTC time.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.